Joining me now, Avi Mayer is the former editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post and founder of the Jerusalem Journal. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Rosemary.
I do want to start by getting your reaction to what we're learning about the suspect involved in this horrifying shooting of two Israeli embassy staffers in DC. According to an eyewitness account, the DC shooter pretended to be a witness and waited for police to arrive before claiming he did it for Gaza. And police say he shouted "Free Palestine" while in custody. What does all this reveal to you?
Well, Rosemary, I think for many Jews and many Israelis, this may be shocking, but is certainly not surprising. Jews have been targets of terror attacks for many years now, and we know that the threat has only increased during the course of this war. When you have protesters chanting "globalize the Intifada" in the streets of major cities, this is what they mean. And it was only a matter of time, unfortunately, that something like this took place. Your correspondent mentioned that Jewish events are publicized without their location for exactly this reason. And so this is, of course, devastating. It will require even greater security measures going forward. But as the ambassador said early on, we are a resilient people. This will not stop us from celebrating our Jewish identity, our connection to Israel. And I'm sure that that is something that we will see in the weeks ahead as well.
And Avi, what questions do you want answered in the wake of this horrifying and deadly shooting?
Well, look, I don't know very much about this suspect. I've seen various reports. I would want to know how this individual has been so radicalized. I am interested, as your correspondent said, in whether there are ties to international terrorist groups and what drove this individual to engage in an act of such senseless, hateful violence, which, of course, is something that we see being incited for across the country and around the world. But what is it that was the tipping point for this person? How did this person get to be so deeply hateful that he was able to take the lives of a young couple leaving a Jewish event in Washington, D.C.? Anti-Semitism is a very, very real problem, and we have to get to the root of it. It has nothing to do with the policies of this government or that. It is about pure hatred of the Jewish people. This was not, it should be noted, an Israeli event that was targeted. It was a Jewish event. And we don't know whether the individuals themselves were targeted because of their connections to the Israeli embassy, but we do know that anti-Semitism has manifested itself in the most violent of ways, and that is something we must all stand firmly against.
And Avi, police are asking how the suspect knew where this event was being held, because it was only once people had registered for the event that the venue was divulged. So there's a big question there as to how this happened. And of course, it gets back to needing more security, doesn't it? And being even more careful about events like this.
Well, I'm not going to speculate as to how the suspect may have known that a Jewish event was taking place at that venue at that time. I'm sure that investigation is ongoing. It is possible that this individual simply registered for the event. I understand it was an event for young professionals in Washington. I myself have attended many events. I used to work for the organization that hosted it, the American Jewish Committee. These are events in which deep and important policy discussions are had in a social environment. And this individual may have portrayed himself as someone who was just interested in figuring out how to bring peace to the Middle East, as so many of the attendees were. But I have no further information about that. I'm sure, as you said, those security precautions will be looked at and perhaps tightened in the weeks ahead.
And what more security do you think is needed to be put in place for events like this and basically to protect Israelis, to protect Jews living in the United States and indeed around the world?
Well, again, the individuals, the group that was targeted was a Jewish event. It was a Jewish target. And that, I think, is the really operative term here. In terms of what security measures can be put in place, I'm sure, again, that is something that local law enforcement and communities across America and around the world are going to be taking a closer look at. As the Prime Minister said, Israel will also be tightening security around its missions, seeing as the individuals who were murdered were linked to the Israeli embassy. And I think that, of course, is a concern as well. But a much deeper concern is the environment of hatred and anti-Semitism that produced this violence. I think that's something that requires a much deeper look in the depths of the American soul How did we get to a point in which an individual can walk up to a Jewish event and just murder people? This is something that is taking place across the world. There have been warnings of this sort of thing for a very long time. Now, of course, it's manifested in the most violent and tragic and horrific of ways. How do we prevent the next one? I think that is the operative question here.
Avi Mayer, thank you for joining us from Jerusalem. Appreciate it.